FIDE Master Noam back with the weekly upload. Last few weeks, I have finally been reading the book My System in Chess. My System, written in 1925, is one of the most famous chess pieces of literature. Critics, however, say the information presented in the book that was valuable in 1925 is outdated and easily accessible today, while others say the book is old, but it's gold. Which one is it? Does the truth maybe lie somewhere in between? Find out today. Firstly, this book forces you to think. Grandmaster Yasser Sereiwan had the following to say about his experience reading this book. The first time he read the book as a teen, he took issue with nearly everything written in the book. He was tricked, however, as our Nimzowitsch puts his rules in the book as definitive. So he was forced to make up his mind. Does he agree with the rules, or does he disagree with what is presented in the book My System in Chess? Let us look at one example where I, for instance, disagreed a bit. In this position here, our Nimzowitsch talks about the power of the blockade, referring to the knight on e6 in this position, which perhaps is helping with moves like g5 at some point or c5 at some point. However, I saw that the pawn structure on the queen side is heavily deformed. The c7, c6, d5 and the a6 pawns are all quite weak. Furthermore, the bishop on b7 is very passive, chewing on granite, namely the pawn on c6 and d5, and will be doing so for a prolonged period of time, as long as the bishop still stands on c5. In short, the viewer is encouraged to make up their mind if they agree with what our Nimzowitsch is presenting in the book or if they disagree, because our Nimzowitsch puts his rules as definitive. Furthermore, the author utilizes a wide range of allusions. For instance, he says about a passed pawn that should be blocked. The passed pawn is a criminal who should be kept under lock and key. This makes the book a bit more pleasant for the reader, as opposed to reading a fully technical book. Another interesting question that arises is, what does the modern engine think of the book? It is highly notable that our Nimzowitsch is often very accurate in his analysis according to the engines. Particularly noteworthy that already in 1925 he was suggesting an opening move that is common theory on top level nowadays. The man was simply decades ahead of his time. However, there were naturally some errors according to the engine. For instance, the aforementioned example with the blockading knight on e6 we talked about prior, where the engine indeed does give white a big advantage. Most of the concepts in the book are quite simple, and others a bit more advanced. Hence, I believe this book is for all levels, beginner and master levels alike. Something I need to be critical of, however, is that the way our Nimzowitsch explains his concepts is not the most clear sometimes. His explanations are not always easy to interpret by the common reader. Sometimes I've had to think for up to 30 minutes or so before I finally understand one of his concepts. On one hand, you remember better if you have to think a lot about something and sort of fight for it, than if you were spoon-fed the knowledge. Another perspective is that not everyone has the will and desire to struggle like this, and perhaps clearer explanations would have saved time for the reader. This is why I am going to stream this week or next week on Twitch, going through the book My System. I hope to be able to make the knowledge easier to digest for the viewers than to read the book alone. Do not hesitate to follow me on Twitch. The link will be in the top of the description so you do not miss out. Finally, I need to mention that our Nimzowitsch was one of the best players in the 20s and in the early 30s. He might come across as a little high in the hat, as we say in Norwegian, / arrogant as a consequence. On a final verdict, this book is relevant for all levels and contains valuable concepts. I am sure that just like most other decent chess literature, you would gain something from reading it. How much you'll gain depends on how much effort you're willing to put into this book. If you got another perspective on whether you should read my system, feel free to hit the subscribe button for weekly instructive chess content. This helps bump me up in the algorithm. See you next Tuesday.